dinner videos to give you guys inspiration for cooking for the week. This week we are cooking out of the Ina Garten Back to Basics Cookbook, and tonight we are going to be making a Tuscan lemon chicken recipe. To go alongside that, we're going to be making some roasted tomatoes with rosemary, as well as some store-bought pre-cooked kind of potatoes that have garlic and rosemary as well. I thought all the flavors would go well together. Let me show you guys the recipe. Here is the cookbook we are cooking out of today. It's the Barefoot Contessa Back to Basics. And this is the actual recipe, the Tuscan lemon chicken recipe. This recipe actually calls for opening the chicken up flat and then cooking it on the grill on both sides. We were not up for the task of basically butchering a chicken today, so we are just going to roast it in the oven, but we're going to do the same kind of marinade and then roast the chicken. And then to go alongside that, we are going to try these roasted garlic and rosemary potatoes in the oven. We've never tried them, although we have tried the mashed potatoes from this brand and they are pretty good, so hopefully these will be good. And then I'm just going to do some simple roasted tomatoes with some rosemary on there as well, so hopefully the rosemary flavor will tie through all three components of the dinner and it'll be a nice dinner for us.
To get started on this one, you are going to need 2 teaspoons of lemon zest, which should be the zest from about 2 lemons. You're going to put that into a large bowl. To that, you're going to want to add 1/3 cup of good olive oil, as well as 1/3 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. You'll also want to add 1 teaspoon of freshly ground pepper. I added some salt as well, even though the recipe didn't call for it. You're then going to want to add 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. This will be about 3 cloves. And you're also going to add 1 tablespoon of minced fresh rosemary leaves. You're going to want to get these into the bowl and then stir everything to combine. If you've never worked with rosemary before, the easiest way to deal with it is pull the leaves backwards off the stems, and then you can release the leaves from the stems and then just chop up the leaf. Once you get this rosemary finely minced, you're going to want to add it to the bowl, stir everything up, and then we added this right on top of the chicken that we were going to roast. We roasted this in the oven for about maybe an hour and a half. A general rule of thumb is about 20 minutes per pound for chicken, plus about 15 minutes if you're cooking the chicken at 375. While that was roasting, I prepared these heirloom tomatoes. I cut them in half. I then minced up some more of that fresh rosemary that I had, as well as added salt and pepper. I then just put these on a simple baking sheet that I had lined with tinfoil and sprayed with Pam, and got these into the oven to roast along with the chicken. Here was my husband's finished plate with some of the dark meat from the chicken, and in a second I'll show you my plate. This was a decent recipe. I have no complaints about sort of the marinade that went on the chicken. I think if you prepared the chicken spatchcocked and on the grill as she suggests, it probably would have been even better. So if you guys have the time, do it.
Hey guys, it's Ryan. Welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ryan. I am a working mom. I typically work outside of the home, but right now I am working from home. I am a mom to a very, very soon to be 7-month-old son. This week we are cooking dinners out of the Ina Garten Back to Basics cookbook, and tonight in particular we are making a tomato soup recipe. So let me show you guys the recipe and show you the ingredients you're gonna need. So here is the recipe. It's the cream of fresh tomato soup. And here's the cookbook we're cooking out of. It's the Barefoot Contessa Back to Basics by Ina Garten. And here are the ingredients you're going to need for this recipe. So as with most recipes, I believe you start with extra virgin olive oil, and then you will use salt and pepper to flavor. The base of the soup involves red onions, carrots, and then some garlic. I believe the recipe actually calls for 2 red onions, but since this one was giant, I thought I could get away with just 1. You will need 3 cups of, the recipe actually calls for chicken stock. I happen to have vegetable stock in the fridge, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this veggie stock. And you will also need heavy whipping cream. You will need, I believe, 1/4 cup of basil. Then you will need some large beefsteak tomatoes, fine ripe tomatoes. You will need tomato paste. And then often recipes you'll see when you're cooking with tomatoes, they will have you add a little bit of sugar to balance out the acidity from all of the tomatoes. So this is what you guys are gonna need for this recipe. Without further ado, let's get cooking. To get started on this recipe, you're going to want to go ahead and prepare your carrots and your red onions. To prepare the carrots, you just want to peel them and then chop them into a pretty fine dice. You're only going to cook these about 10 minutes, so you need them to be small enough that they'll get tender during that time. The recipe does call for 2 onions. As I mentioned earlier, my onion was pretty large, so I thought I could get away with just 1 onion. So go ahead and chop both the carrots and the onions, and then we will get those into the pan. Once your carrots and onions are prepared, you're going to go ahead and add 3 tablespoons of olive oil to a pan. You're going to heat that over medium-low heat and then add your onions and carrots to saute for about 10 minutes or until they're tender. While your carrots and garlic is cooking, you're going to go ahead and chop up 3 cloves of garlic. You should end up with about 1 tablespoon of garlic to add to the pan. I set my garlic to the side while I prepared the tomatoes. You want 4 pounds of vine ripened tomatoes, about 5 large tomatoes, and you want to coarsely chop those. You then want to add your garlic to the pan that contained the carrots and the onions and cook that for about 1 minute. Be careful not to overcook the garlic or it will burn. After that, you're going to add your tomatoes into this pot, as well as 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, 1/4 cup of packed chopped fresh basil leaves, and 3 cups of your stock. Now again, I'm using veggie stock, but the recipe does call for chicken stock. You will also add 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, as well as 2 teaspoons of freshly ground black pepper to this mixture. You're then going to mix everything well and bring the soup to a boil, then lower the heat to simmer and simmer it uncovered for about 30 to 40 minutes or until the tomatoes are tender. Then went ahead and used my immersion blender to sort of puree this soup. I will say the recipe calls for putting the soup through a food mill into a bowl. I thought the immersion blender worked great. I will say the trick for using an immersion blender is blend 85 times longer than you think you have to, and then the soup will turn out well. To finish this, you're going to add 1/4 cup of heavy cream and then mix this up and it will be ready to serve. I will tell you guys, this tomato soup, approved by my husband and my mom, was the best tomato soup that I've ever made from scratch. Normally, I actually frankly think the Campbell's soup is better than homemade tomato soup. Not this one. This one was so good. If you guys are looking for a comforting tomato soup recipe, I definitely encourage you to try this one out. Hey guys, it's Ryan. Welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. We are continuing to cook this week out of the Ina Garten Back to Basics Cookbook, and tonight we are making a mustard tilapia recipe. I will show you guys the book and the recipe. Here is the recipe we're cooking tonight. The mustard roasted fish. I mean, how good does that look? And it is out of this Barefoot Contessa Back to Basics Cookbook. So what you will need for this one is you will need tilapia fillets. I got golden tilapia farm raised from my store. I got this from our good grocery store, and their fish tends to be really good and fresh, so hopefully this will be good fish. The recipe actually calls for creme fraiche. My store did not have any. You can substitute sour cream. It will be a little bit tangier than creme fraiche, but it is a fine substitute. And then some Dijon mustard. The recipe calls for Dijon and stone ground. I don't have stone ground, so I'm just going to use Dijon exclusively. And then capers and some shallots, as well as salt and pepper. Alongside that, I'm going to cook one of these pastaroni boxes. This is the olive oil and Italian herb. You really can't go wrong with any of these, either pastaroni sides or Knorr noodles. They're all delicious and they all pair very well with fish. And then I'm also going to go ahead and roast up some broccoli. So without further ado, let's get cooking. To start this recipe, you need to combine the creme fraiche, the 2 mustards, the shallots, and the capers in a bowl. You actually need 8 ounces of creme fraiche. Again, I'm using sour cream, so I actually got my food scale out. If you guys don't know how to use this, it's super easy. Just set it on whatever measurement you're measuring in here in ounces, and then put your bowl on and press tare, and then it will zero out, and then you can add your ingredients and get a real measurement. You then need 3 tablespoons of this Dijon mustard and 1 tablespoon of whole grain mustard if you have it. Again, I did not. As you guys saw, my tablespoon did not fit in the mouth of this jar, and I was sort of too lazy to take it out and transfer it to the tablespoon, so I just approximated the mustard that was going in. You then are going to add your 2 teaspoons of drained capers to the mixture, as well as you're going to slice up your shallots and end up with 2 tablespoons of sliced shallots that you're going to put into this bowl. Once everything's into the bowl, you're going to go ahead and mix everything up. You're also going to want to add 1 teaspoon of salt as well as a half a teaspoon of black pepper into the mixture. Then you're going to go ahead and mix all of these ingredients until the sauce is well combined. You then want to take your tilapia fillets and place them into an oven-proof baking sheet. Here I had pre-sprayed this with Pam. I feel like Pam never hurts anything, so I tossed that on the bottom. You're then going to put the sauce to evenly coat your fish. The goal is to have the fish completely covered with this sauce. I then went ahead and popped that in the oven. You're going to bake it at 425 for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the thickness of the fish, until it is done. In the meantime, I went ahead and prepped my broccoli. I just chopped this up and then got it onto a roasting pan. Again, that was sprayed with a little bit of Pam. I then hit it with some of my favorite seasoning. While the fish and the broccoli were roasting, I went ahead and started preparing my pasta. You guys should just prepare this according to the package direction, but I just wanted to give you the idea for it as a whole meal. I tend to use these pastaroni sides a lot with fish. I don't know why I like it. I think my husband likes it as well. It's just a good accompaniment for any sort of roasted or grilled fish that we eat. Alright, here's the finished fish. In hindsight, I sort of wish that I had broiled it to finish up the sauce a little bit more. I thought this recipe was okay, but not the best, and my husband really didn't care for it. So the winner of the group was definitely the tomato soup.